You ever walked past a house that looked picture perfect, like something out of a magazine, and thought, man, they must have the best life? Yeah, number 27, on Maple Drive, was one of those houses, neatly trimmed lawn, white shutters, fresh paint, but if walls could scream, that place would have drowned out the whole neighborhood. Inside, Maya Wallace was on her knees, cleaning up broken porcelain off the kitchen tile while her husband Dan barked at her from across the room. His voice wasn't loud, but it didn't have to be. It was sharp like a knife that didn't cut skin, just spirit. Dan was the kind of man people called charming. You know, the type tailored suits, firm handshake, says all the right things at parties. But once the front door clicked shut, that charm curdled into something cruel. Maya, she had learned to move quiet, speak soft, dress carefully enough to hide the bruises. And, somehow, she still smiled at his side at every neighborhood barbecue. Her silence wasn't weakness, it was survival. That night they went to the Smiths, some big social thing Dan insisted on. He played the role perfectly, laughing with neighbors, kissing cheeks. Maya stood beside him like wallpaper, beautiful, invisible, and fading. But Janet Smith, she noticed. Her eyes lingered just a beat too long. It wasn't pity, it was suspicion. Maya felt it. She tucked her hair behind her ear and smiled tighter. The drive home was silent until the front door closed. Then came the hissed accusations. Did you enjoy making me look like a fool? His hand clamped around her wrist like a vice. Maya didn't fight. What's the point when you already know how the story ends? But she still had a fragment of hope. Alex, her brother, lost in military deployments, barely a phone call in years, but still, in the dark quiet of her worst nights, she'd whisper his name like a prayer. And as fate would have it, that prayer was about to land. See, Alex had just returned stateside. Years of black ops, war zones, and silence had hardened him, but not enough to erase the memory of his little sister's laughter. He had this photo of her in his jacket-taped edges, bent corners, probably handled more times than his weapon. Something in her last letters had gnawed at him. Words between the lines. So he came home, and just as he rolled into Green Valley, heart full of plans to surprise her, he saw flashing lights in front of her house. "What's going on?" he asked a neighbor. "Your brother?" the man said. They took Maya to the hospital. Something about an accident. Alex didn't wait. Minutes later, he was at her bedside, the machines clicking steadily like a countdown to heartbreak. Maya's face was swollen, bruised beyond recognition, and yet unmistakably her. He took her hand barely warm and whispered, "I'm here. You're not alone anymore." The door creaked. Dan stepped in, putting on his best grief-stricken husband act. "Alex, this was all a mistake." Alex didn't even blink. "Save it. We'll talk. But not here." Now here's where things twisted. Turns out Maya's neighbor, Julia, the same one who kept calling to check in, had been recording. Porch cam caught audio of that final fight. The screams. The crash. Everything. She gave Alex the flash drive with hands shaking, but eyes steady. "People look the other way," she said. "But not anymore." Next morning, Alex walked into Dan's office like a loaded weapon. "Dun smear kid. You think you can come in here, play hero? You left her." Alex dropped the flash drive on his desk. "You're the one who broke her." Dan's face changed. First smug, then pale. He lunged, but Alex didn't move, just grabbed his collar, slammed him against the wall, and whispered, "You made your mistake when you thought no one would come for her." Police showed up minutes later. Julia had already tipped them off. Dan went down in cuffs, still shouting about how it was all a misunderstanding. But the neighbors? They just stared, silent, shocked, like they were watching a mask fall off a monster they thought was a man. Back at the hospital, Alex sat by Maya's bed again, her fingers limp in his. "It's over," he whispered, and just then she stirred. "Maya," he leaned closer. Her eyes fluttered open, confused, scared. Then "Alex?" Her voice was cracked, barely there. "I'm here. You're safe now." Tears welled in her eyes as she gripped his hand. "He's gone. He's arrested." Julia helped. Everyone knows. The days after were slow, filled with rehab, therapy, and a lot of quiet mornings where Maya just stared out Julia's window, relearning what safety felt like. Julia was a rock, checking in, cooking meals, sitting quietly when words were too much. And Alex? He stayed, took a local job, moved 2 streets over. He said, "I left once. Never again." One afternoon, they sat together on Julia's porch, Maya sipping tea, sunlight on her face. She looked different, not healed yet, but unbroken. "I feel free," she said. "You are," Alex replied. "And you deserve it." They sat in silence a while, not the heavy kind, but the kind that comes when two people have finally survived the storm. When Maya spoke again, her voice was firm. "We both do. We've carried enough pain." The camera would fade out there if this were a movie. But life, it doesn't end in fade-outs. Dan's trial was still coming. The neighborhood now praised Maya's bravery, but some still whispered. And even though justice had started moving, healing wasn't linear. But here's the thing. For the first time in years, Maya wasn't scared of tomorrow. Because tomorrow was hers again. And Dan? Well, he finally found out what it feels like to be on the receiving end of silence, only this time it came with bars. But let me ask you something. How many perfect homes in perfect neighborhoods are hiding screams behind drywall? And how long do we let charm excuse cruelty before we finally call it what it is? Because sometimes justice doesn't come in courtroom. Sometimes it comes in the form of a brother who finally came home. So what do you think? Does a man like Dan deserve a second chance, or just a longer sentence? Let me know in the comments.